them. If they don't like your face, they tell you they don't like your face. You don't have to wonder. They just tell you.
I remember being in the Mesa, Arizona airport, and I had like just started to share some of the feelings that I had been having.
How these are the graves of the relationships that you killed because you weren't willing to address conflict well. Hey friends, welcome to the Ramble.
What up?
I'm Pastor Jeff with my dear friends and partners in ministry and all the other things that we share. Say hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hey guys,
Tell them your names.
Tell them your names. I mean, Jacob.
I'm Sophie.
Right on. Hey, we're so glad you guys are here. You do us a huge favor if you like, comment, and share. This is a brand new podcast. As part of our ministry at Restore Church, and you do us the biggest favor when you do those things and help us spread the word. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. When you do that, we're going to read all your comments and follow up with you to the best of our ability. And thanks for being here today.
And if you have a problem with us, say it to our face.
Dude, that was so aggressive.
Do people have problems with us?
Do you have problems with them? Man,
Something
I might have a lot of conflict with them.
with the...
with them.
With them.
With
Who
the
is
viewers.
Who is them?
With the church.
Yeah, with the church, man. I'm just so disillusioned at the church, man.
Oh, no.
This episode is dedicated to our conflicted people, you, the viewer. Just going hot.
Yeah.
Conflict.
Do you have a conflict with Sophie?
The boulder is conflicted
Do you have a conflict with Sophie?
all the time.
You're not allowed to. People aren't allowed to have conflicts with Sophie. I just get so protective of somebody. Remember that one time, Sophie, that somebody was cussing you out on the church phone? And
Which
I would.
time?
Which time?
Jesus. Happens so much. It's the new normal.
Yeah. No, I remember.
And I had your back, though.
You did.
I went into war mode. I said, "You will never, ever speak to my Sophie like that again." Did they ever do it again? Exactly.
No.
Okay,
Not to
good.
Sophie,
Not to Sophie.
Not to but to Pastor Jacob. We went to war
Anyway.
this fall, 2025.
I don't know if this is a good question or not, but like, what's the worst conflict you've ever had
Oh.
Oh,
that's, church podcast appropriate?
I don't know.
Hey guys, if you're watching, you got a terrible conflict. Why don't you share it in the comments?
yeah. Tell us about your worst. By the way, we're talking about conflict management, conflict resolution today.
Godly conflict.
Yeah, I think just to start off with like a little presupposition, I think people in the Midwest and really Americans in general are terrible at addressing conflict because we just let it sit and boil. Like it's like we're Irish, and conflicts are potatoes, and like we just set up. We let it sit and boil until it boils over, and like this has been my experience throughout my entire childhood, where there would be something I would do wrong or something somebody would do wrong, and it would just sort of boil and like keep getting hotter and hotter until it was like this eruptive oil fire in a kitchen stove, and there was nothing you could do about it at that point. It was just like explosive. For me, probably the biggest.
Oh, you're actually going to share one.
Yeah,
Okay.
the biggest.
Spill the tea, my bro.
The biggest conflict I have ever had was in high school,
Okay.
and it was with one of my teachers. And the conflict was rooted out from me doing some really stupid things at after prom. And that included like we left prom like 20 minutes in. We went to one of our friends' house and got a bunch of booze and stuff out of their parents' liquor cabinet. And then we went to our other friend's house, and we just like we thought it was cool to just get drunk, and then we showed up, and I didn't think I was that crazy, and it turns out I must have been the drunkest person on the planet because every teacher was looking at me funny. They were talking to me weird.
Wow.
And then my drama like play director was so incredibly mad at me. And like she embarrassed me in front of like the entire cast and crew. And
Yeah.
like it was perhaps the biggest conflict I have ever had with somebody.
So what did you do? Like, what was the conflict? Like, what? I mean, you were
Okay,
plastered, but
yeah,
like they rebuked you and you handled it poorly. You handled it
No,
well. What
no.
happened?
So what happened was, it was a Saturday was prom, and it went into Sunday morning, early
Okay.
Sunday morning. I slept all day Sunday, and then Monday was senior skip day.
Okay.
And that was always a day that we got off as seniors. And, you know, I had written as the, you know, student body president to like, hey, let's,
Yeah.
you know, you request it off and then you get it exempt from the administration. So on Monday, my friends and I, we went to Sioux Falls and did all this stuff. And then Tuesday, I was in choir class. No, I can't remember where I was. No, I was in,
We understand that you
government.
don't remember.
I was in government. I was in government class, and I got called down to the superintendent's office.
Superintendent, not
Yeah,
principal.
yep,
Superintendent.
Dr. Ellsbury.
This escalated. Okay.
So he sits me down and he says, Jacob, I have heard reports and I understand that you were falling over drunk at after prom. And I said, no. I was not falling over. The only time I fell over is when I did the inflatable bouncy house and it was unstable ground.
So you're defending yourself.
So I was.
Yeah.
I didn't lie to him. He said, did you drink at after prom? I said, no, I did before. And you know what he said?
Huh.
He said, I'm going to say you said no. Because if you say yes, that you were drunk, then you would not be able to do the play that's starting tonight. So Dr. Ellsbury, who was an incredible guy,
Saved you.
saved my butt. And he showed me a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness and a lot of mercy. That still didn't change what everybody else thought and did.
Wow.
So my advisory teacher, which is like homeroom, because all my friends were in the same advisory group, she closed the door in her classroom and berated us. And then that night at one of our dress rehearsals, my drama director, after practice was done, she told everyone else to get off the stage. And then there was a girl named Desiree who I'd gone to prom with. She said, I want you guys to dance together like you did at prom. And I said, we didn't. She's like, that's right, because you were out getting drunk in front of everybody and like embarrassed me. So like,
this is wild.
Yeah. So like, and like that conflict had never been resolved. And I felt like,
so you just took it, you were shamed, you just took it and moved on. Conflict. That was how it ended.
That's how it ended. But like, you could probably tell there's still like a little bit of bitterness because it's like, hold up.
Yeah.
I screwed up. And that was the first time I'd ever gotten in trouble, like in high school, like as an adult, first time I'd ever gotten in trouble. And the problem is I wasn't the only one who was a little bit schmoozed. Okay. Like there were like 10 other students who were, but it was only because I was the good kid. You know? I'd never done anything like that before. So anyway, that's the biggest conflict that I can remember. And it's still like, it's so embarrassing to think about. And
it's a good story too. Pat's over there just getting a good chuckle out of the story.
So yeah, it's the biggest conflict I've ever had.
I think I want Pat on the podcast. I like having Pat around.
It'd be like having Sophie.
Everything I do is better when Pat's part of it. You know that?
Same.
Just everything. You're welcome, Sophie. Set you up for that one.
I know.
All right, Sophie, conflict that you want to share?
No. I can't think of any.
Okay, cool. All right, so conflict, godly conflict. Keep us going. What do you want to hit on for conflict?
So I guess like the biggest question that I have is, what's the most common cause of conflict?
Most common Cause
Like
conflict.
why do people end up having these boil over moments where they get mad and they embarrass you or they say things that they don't mean? Like, what's the biggest cause of that?
What do you think, Sophia?
I mean, I think not all conflict. Most conflict comes from either just pride, that you don't want to admit you're wrong, or un uncommunicated or unclear expectations that get um then they're unmet expectations for one person, unclear for another person, and then it just boils over. Like you
Mm-hmm.
oh, most conflict doesn't happen from one thing, doesn't boil over from
Okay.
one offense,
Yeah.
but when it's not addressed over time, it'll boil over into a bigger conflict that should have been addressed sooner. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of value in I think there's a lot of value in labeling conflict, because conflict's not just conflict. I think conflict isn't let me back up a minute. Conflict is socially accepted as a negative word, as a bad
Right.
word,
Right.
and it's not. So I think it's really important to label conflict as good or bad conflict.
Mm.
And a lot of people would be like, "Whoa, what do you mean good conflict? What's good conflict? Conflict's bad," because of our social view of it. And we, like you said a little bit ago, we live in a part of the world. Midwesterners are like this. I don't think I meet people north. I love when I meet with people from like Northeast or far West. It seems like those parts of the countries, they tell you what they think. The people I meet from those parts of the country, when I meet them, really, and we were both crazy wrong about this, and now we don't have to just shove this deep down until it boils over, and it doesn't actually boil over, explodes as this pressure cooker. Now it's like, hey, I want to talk to you. I feel this tension with you. I think it might cause a little conflict because I don't think that you're gonna like what I'm gonna say, or you won't like what I have to say. But now we get to address something that needs to be aired out, and now we're going to be closer, and we're like, oh wow, I never thought of it that way. And you can be like, I never thought of it that way, and
Mm.
now we can love each other better. And so I call it constructive conflict, not fighting. What do you guys' take on that?
I agree, but also it's so hard. It sounds easy, and it's like, yeah, obviously I want to address conflict and grow from that
Yeah.
thing, but it's the uncomfortable part
Yeah.
of going in there and saying it
Mhm.
Yeah.
that stops me, at least,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of
So
people.
we did this as a staff the other day.
Hmm.
Why we
So
got to bring it up?
we 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 just had some staff stuff where and it was what I just said. It was like, hey, we just assumed everybody figured stuff out that we should have given each other clarity on,
Mhm.
and we did it. Was it that uncomfortable?
No, that, well, I had been wanting to have that meeting for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was like kind of a building up, because I'm like, I don't want to
Mm.
bring it up. I don't want to bring it up. We need to do this. And it's really good that we did it, and I'm glad that we did it.
Yeah.
But I think in other conflicts,
Okay.
I'm just I trust you guys and know you guys, but I think if when it's someone that you're not sure how they'll react, when it's
Yeah.
someone that you're not super close with, it's harder.
Yeah.
I mean, like, man, I definitely felt when, like, during the building project, especially, like, when I was just like, man, I was in a rough spot. And I think you and I were both just kind of stressed, and we had different expectations of what was going on. And I mean, we had like a really heated discussion.
I didn't know how
Yeah.
stressed I was until it was done and the stress left,
Yeah.
and I could start to breathe. And then when it was done, I was like,
Yeah. God,
wow,
it
I
makes me want
think
to
we could have killed each other.
I makes me want to cry just thinking about it, because like it felt so traumatic. Like, and it's not a huge, like, it's, oh, it's a building project, but like, eh,
Just
two more
pressure.
weeks, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there are church members who are like, we've been giving a lot of money to this, like, what's going on? And but I remember you and I,
6-month project took
yeah,
a year.
yeah, and like,
Oh, when we flew out there together.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this is in like December of 2022, and like we were just sitting there. I started sharing my feelings, and I just remember like this like anxiety rising up and like choking me. And then
No, that was me.
and then like you were also frustrated because I think like we just hadn't communicated.
Mhm.
We had talked a lot, but we hadn't communicated. You know, it was like we were both talking, and I was like, I don't understand. And I've never been good at asking clarifying questions and all that. But yeah, I think it all starts because like we're trying to be nice, we're trying to assume things of each other, and then like I don't want to disappoint you, but then I'm like, oh, like so it's like all these feelings are just
Mhm.
getting there, and then it's like it's so much easier if you would just talk to our contractor and not have to go through me. Like you have all these ideas, you're asking all the questions, and like you're telling me to do this, and then I tell you, and then you're coming back with more questions, and I'm like, I don't know, I didn't ask those questions. And so it's like all this just like rose up and like sort of spilled over the pot.
Yeah.
What caused that? Like, and I think that's especially in stressful situations, there's something that happened within all of that that caused this specific occurrence
Yeah.
to happen. And it wasn't like something that you and I did specifically, but it was just something that happened that I think happens naturally in our culture.
Well, I think the root of conflict, the root of ungodly conflict is pride.
Mm-hmm.
The root of all conflict is unmet expectations.
Mm.
Right? Every conflict I think is born out of two sets of opposing expectations that aren't realized, and the outcome depends upon like the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's husband and wife, one of you probably has to concede a little bit out of love and nurturing and
Oh.
just sacrificial love for the other person, because you're probably, if you agreed 100% on the situation, you probably wouldn't have come into conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a natural need for somebody to concede somewhat. Now you add clarity, and when you add clarity, you go from opposing desires or expectations to more aligned expectations, but rarely do they become perfectly aligned, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to But the concessions are easier because you have more understanding. Like our conflict the other day,
Yeah.
we all made concessions,
Yeah.
uh, because the clarity gave us room to say, well, I need to be more clear on that. I need to be more respectful on that, right? Or, whatever
Yeah.
it was that we talk about. It's like the concessions are easier to make when we have constructive conflict rooted in love and trust. And when they make sense, it's no longer just I'm angry about my unmet expectations. It's like now I understand, I can rationalize, and you're not being a big dumb jerk on purpose. It's you're looking for the big dumb jerk in the room when I said that. You're not being a big dumb jerk on purpose.
Yeah.
It's like, no, actually you were trying your best to do your best,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to realize maybe my expectations weren't realistic.
Mm.
Right. And I think that's every conflict is unmet expectations.
Mm.
And depending on the nature of the relationship, we either concede or we accept or we change our expectations. Parent kid relationship, there's my 7-year-old, his level of autonomy is significantly less than mine in our house. And so there's going to be some things where we'll have conflict. He doesn't have the right to demand the change of certain expectations.
Mm-hmm.
There are some where maybe I'll concede if he can make a good case to me out of our relationship, but most of it's like, yeah, I'm not going to let you stay up to midnight every night. Well, Dad, I expected that you'd say yes. Well, I can understand why your 7-year-old brain would think that, but this is not a concession. We're going to have opposing expectations, but you're going to have to deal with it.
Go talk to Pastor Jacob if you want to stay up until midnight every night. Go talk to him and see how things are going.
So I hope that adds some
Yeah.
clarity to it.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's a good definition for people listening. Just two thoughts. Number one, conflict doesn't have to be a dirty or ugly word, right?
Right.
We can. In fact, I'm preaching on conflict this Sunday,
I know.
and I'm gonna start the sermon with a. I'm gonna start the sermon with a digital image of a graveyard that I had made on AI because I didn't want to burden Sophie with this really annoying graphic
Oh,
that
do
she
you
would
want
have
a
to make.
sermon bumper?
Yeah.
It's too late.
Make it a graveyard.
Late.
And
Should we just
and I'm gonna start off with what do you see here? And I'm gonna have the graveyard on there. I'm gonna say something along the lines of and the sermon will have already been preached by the time this airs, but I'm going to start off with talking about this is the death of the ministry that never started because you were afraid of having a conflict with somebody or having an uncomfortable conversation.
Wow.
Like, this is the graveyard of the opportunities and blessings of your life that are things you killed from your unwillingness to have healthy conflict resolution.
Hold up. Let's unpack that a little bit more. Hold up. So like our unwillingness to resolve conflict, you're saying, kills ministries, kills relationships. Oh,
It
dude.
kills futures, man. It kills futures.
Future, man.
Well, because that's why I love what Sophie said when we first started talking about this. It's like so many conflicts. They're not the one conflict, right, Sophie?
Mhm.
You talk about the compounding effect. Things boil over. Things build up over time.
Right.
And like I've never counseled a couple on the verge of divorce over one singular issue unless it's something extreme like an affair, right?
Sure.
But then the affair was actually probably rooted in a list of unhealthy conflicts in the relationship that led to a sense of disunity, and someone else met those needs where that disunity was, I'm like, there's still a conflict even that led to that. And I'm not blaming the person who I want to be really careful. The person who got cheated on, you're not blaming them for the other person cheating, all that stuff. Man, we should do a whole episode on that. That'd be a fun
On cheating.
ramble on cheating, on affairs, and reconciliation. Ooh, there we go. But there's always compounding conflict, and I've never counseled a couple out of just one conflict, right?
Yeah, it's always a bunch of them. And like I've counseled a handful of couples, and it's never one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you said you had some really like well prepped thoughts on conflict, where are they at?
Where are they, Sophie?
I don't mean like I didn't mean, oh man, I didn't mean it like that.
Where
Like,
are they?
like what direction were they headed
Where is
towards?
she?
I don't remember.
What? You don't remember?
Mm.
Do you and Pat? How do you and Pat do conflict?
Yo, I've never seen you guys in conflict before.
Yeah.
I live in your basement.
I know.
I've seen
We
them
never fight.
I've seen them a little. I've seen you guys just a little bit extra before, just like once.
No, we handle conflict better than we used to.
So what was the difference between the used to and the now?
I mean, yeah. I mean, salvation. But we
Oh, so you haven't had a conflict in over 4 or 5 years then. Okay.
no. We just have been getting better at communicating our expectations. I mean, our biggest conflicts are when I feel like he's not hearing what I'm saying.
Hmm.
And
Pat, listen, bro. He's like the
Um,
best listener ever. You guys, Pat's amazing.
No, he's amazing. That's because we almost never have conflict. And then we'll get really frustrated about it for a while, but then we'll come back and and um communicate more, be more willing to hear what the other person's saying. I think that sometimes when in the heat of a conflict, you're not willing to hear that you're wrong, or you're not willing to concede your side because it's all emotions and
Mm-hmm.
And you've justified your feelings.
frustration. And yeah, and you're just like, I'm justified in feeling so exactly. But then when you calm down a little bit, you're just like, no, I love this person and I want to
Yeah.
hear their side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm so passionate about this because I think that a person's ability to deal with conflict well can be probably one of probably one of the, if not the number one limitations to how successful they can be in life. I think the ability to handle conflict well or not handle well is one of the number one issues that will determine how successful you can be in life. Because everything is going to come down to, like, everything you do, you're going to get to a situation where you have to meet opposing expectations and figure out how to handle them. And you move forward. You can't move. You do it. You can't handle unmet expectations at work. You're going to quit or get fired, right? Or not unmet, but opposing expectations. You quit, you get fired. Relationship, you can't deal with it. You're gonna get left or leave because of your unwillingness to deal with it.
Yeah.
They'll leave you. You know, I want to be careful talking about people's relationships like that. I'm not saying everybody's gonna get left by somebody, but a lot of times it happens. Like they leave or the relationship's damaged, or you leave.
Well, I mean, the marriage statistics they speak for themselves, right? Like over 50% of marriages end in divorce in America. 80%, here's what's interesting. 80% of marriages that start in high school will end. And it's growing more and more.
15 years, baby.
Wow.
Let's go.
Wow.
Dating.
What's that?
8 years.
8 years total for you. 17 years for me and Brittany if we count dating.
I'm single.
Ladies, just so you know, our boy Pastor Jacob, he's single and ready to mingle.
Ready to mingle.
Ready to mingle.
I like being single.
He says he likes being single. He says he's called to singleness, but I respect that.
Don't.
Anyways, call him anyways.
I like Fortnite a little bit too much right now. So,
hey, ladies, if there's any ladies out there who like Fortnite and Jesus, talk to my boy Pastor Jacob over here.
Stop it. So, what's the first step into like resolving these massive conflicts? So, like, we can think of people who have like built up conflicts over time that seem like the Mount Everest of resolution. How do you take the first step in resolving that? Like, and it doesn't have to be like marital conflicts, but like,
I know marriage is just so easy to pick on.
I know, boss and employee relationship.
Yeah.
Like what step do you take? Like, what's the first thing you do? Because every time you talk about it, it seems like you explode, or like your spouse explodes, or your boss gets upset, or like how does one start the resolution process?
So this is tricky, and it's like the answer to it is actually a pre-answer. So let's go to Scripture. Let's go to God's expectations of us, at least as Christians, assuming most of our people are going to be Christ followers. And this is tricky when we're dealing with unchristian world that doesn't have the same values. But when we got saved, when Jesus Christ became our Lord and Savior, he revoked our right to unforgiveness.
Whoa, hold up. Say that again.
When we became Christians, Jesus revoked our right to unforgiveness. He stripped us of the liberty of not resolving conflicts. And so that's why I say it's a pre-answer. It's like, well, your worldview needs to give you permission to enter conflict with the goal of resolution, rather than, because this is what most people do, I think. Most people enter conflict reactively to defend themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's usually defense.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, you're mad at me or I'm mad at you. So now I'm going to defend my unmet expectations. Using that kind of liberally in this conversation, like my expectations are unmet. Oh, I didn't meet your expectations. Oh, well, let me tell why your expectations are stupid. And so now it's a defense mechanism rather than a worldview guided by peace for Christ. Right. So it has to start off with the idea of what we first started with. If people listening want to grow in their way to handle conflict, they need to embrace the idea that conflict can be constructive, and it doesn't have to be destructive or defensive. It can be constructive and actually make your life better. What's the side effect of that? Well, now you have the ability to look at conflict and not get upset, especially if you're prone to anger in conflict. You don't have to get upset. You can be like, like, oh, I'm excited to know this thing now. Now we can grow and get healthy. And I don't have to defend myself and fight with you and be like, oh, I'm excited for the opportunity this brings to my life.
Yeah. How do you deal with the shame that accompanies conflict sometimes?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I track that. Where does it have to be shameful?
Well, so for me, it's not always anger, right?
Okay. Yeah.
The defense mechanism comes out because for me, I feel shameful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I screwed up. But like I don't want to feel bad,
Yeah.
or like I do feel bad, and I'm just like, like how do you deal with that? Like where does that come from? Like why do I feel ashamed? Like
What do you think, Sophie? Because I think that's your go-to with conflict too. I don't see you have anger conflict. I see you have I feel
No,
bad conflict.
no. I have anger.
When you and I have conflict,
I'm
which is
angry.
very rare, we're talking about it on here. It sounds like we probably have conflict all the time.
What? It's
It's
rare. You guys fight every no.
our conflict's rare, but it's usually you feel bad because you want to do a good job. No?
No,
Are you mad at me all the time and I don't know it or what?
in
Yes.
mostly anger. But I get what you're saying about the shame a little bit, but not so much.
Yeah.
Like you feel bad because you did something wrong.
Well, so in conflict, when someone says I did something wrong, I always believe them. It doesn't matter if I'm not in the wrong.
Hmm.
Someone could say this was terrible. You did this. You did this. You did
Hmm.
this, and I could have had nothing to do with it. But I'll believe that it's my fault, and so I feel ashamed and I feel shameful. And this got brought out like a year and a half ago, I think. Um, Someone was really upset about just life circumstances, and they attributed their conflict to me. And they're like, "You did this." And it got to the point where, like, out of defense, I said, "Listen, you keep saying I did. I didn't do it. Like, this wasn't me. It wasn't my decision because, like, it was making me feel bad. Like I started to feel sad and like,
Hmm.
why are you mad at me? Like, this isn't." And so I got defensive, and I couldn't. Like, it just
Oh,
it wasn't possible for me to approach it and be like, "Oh, I hear you," when it's like, no, like it was me.
I don't want to be dismissive of what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I know the situation you're talking to, and I think you're talking about somebody you're not super close to.
No.
So I want to, I think before we before we expand like concentric circles that far out, I think we should maybe, I want to kind of zone in on conflict with people we're close to because
It,
that's where most of the
yeah.
conflict will take place.
Yeah.
And everybody listening, like stranger conflict's going to be different than close relationship conflict.
Yeah. Well, this isn't stranger conflict.
I know, but proximity is not your, it's not your five people you spend most of your life with.
Sure.
It's not your,
Sure.
it's not one of the bigger influences in your life.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where we start. The most helpful, like I think our most helpful content is about those people. And I think saying it aloud for everybody watching is like, well, most people aren't going to have constant conflicts with people outside of their inner circle. Your most common conflicts are actually with the people closest to you, right?
I mean, I don't,
No,
I,
you don't agree with that?
I mean, I still want, like,
I mainly just want to make a strong point on how to handle conflict well with people close to you.
yeah, but like conflict also happens with people who aren't your wife or
Like
your husband,
coworkers.
like
Well, I mean,
coworkers.
those ones are easy for me to shut down. I like when, so like if I have conflict with somebody who's angry or disrespectful, I use the example with Sophie a little bit ago, the person who cussing her out. Um, you have a standard level of, I would call it like a standard operating procedure for your life. Here's here's the way people are and are not allowed to talk to you or
Mhm.
me or whoever. Here's what the ground rules are for how this part of my life operates, right? So I can do this in the workplace, and I encourage everybody to maybe adopt this mindset. At the workplace, somebody starts cussing or being disrespectful, and there's aggressive conflict. They just get one. Hey, listen, stop talking. We're not gonna talk this way. We're gonna be civil and we're gonna problem solve on this. Otherwise, we're done, and you can leave. Right then and there. There's a standard operating procedure that we are going to address this to find resolution, or we're done. We have no reason to talk. If you're not part of my inner circle, I have no reason to be committed to long-term conversation with you in conflict. So either A, we're gonna seek a way to find concessions on our opposing expectations, or we're done. Plain and simple. I had somebody try to pick a fight with me at a funeral once. I just got done preaching a funeral, and somebody was really, really grieving poorly. I was the wrong person to talk to at the wrong time, and they came and laid hands on me in the parking lot of a funeral after I just conducted the ceremony. And I'm giving you a workplace example and a non-workplace example. I put my hands up and I say, listen, this isn't going to happen, and I'm not going to let it happen. You can hit me if you want, but I'm not going to let this happen. And this person has their hands on my throat. I'm like, cool. You can let this happen. But I refuse to engage in conflict right now. If you want to make concessions on our opposing expectations, we can do that. But I'm not going to lay you out on this parking lot of the funeral home right now. And so this can be done. And then you know what happens? Person's super disarmed by it, says, oh, okay, walks away. It's done. And so that my point is the people outside of your circle need to be handled the way people inside of your circle are. And they're often going to try to resolve conflict differently than the people inside of your circle. But your goal is to bring them into the way that you handle conflict with everybody else in your circle, which is constructive. So the person who's in your circle but not inside your circle, hey, you did this to me. Hey, you're going off on me. I know that person's yelling at you, going off. At some point, you just shut it down like, hey, this isn't constructive conflict. I only do constructive conflict because that's how I do conflict. So let's just be done for now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sophie, I see you nodding a lot. What are you processing out of that?
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Good.
Where do you pick up? Like, do you reach out? Do you wait for them to reach out? Like,
so for me, I have a high value of leadership in my life. So I value leadership. So I would want to end it by saying, hey, like if it's unhealthy conflict from outside of my circle, I'd be like, hey, I don't like hey, we're done. But on the way out, I would be like, hey, I don't like the way this ended. If you want to reach out in a few days, then let's pick this back up. And depending on the relationship with them, right? If I know how well I know them or who they are, I maybe will reach out. But I think it's so case by case.
is there a time, like when you say like, hey, we're done? Is there a time where someone could reasonably say, no, this needs to be solved now? Like even if they're not hot, and maybe it's just like maybe both of you are frustrated, but it's like, no, this actually needs to be solved now. Or is there never a case where that's
I mean, if they're correct that it should be done now and they're willing to recalibrate. I did this with somebody I was having a conflict once. Somebody came to the office hot and bothered, and I said, hey, you're going to be disrespectful or we're done. And
you're going to be respectful or we're done? Okay.
Yeah, you're going to be respectful or this is done. And they were shocked that I called them on that. And so they did what Sophie's doing right now and took a big breath. And then they realized that they are not going to be able to proceed as it was, but they were motivated to resolve it. So they recalibrated, and then we were able to work through it.
Nice.
And so I would say there is room to say, hey, maybe we need to take 5. If you're determined to do this today, I think having a leadership mindset of it, you say like with assertiveness, with authority, that and you really mean this, we are going to, if you really want to resolve this today, I'll meet you there, but let's take 5 Let's calm down and let's come back with the goal of solving the problem.
That's great.
I think so.
Man, I think we're out of time, but this
Well,
is so good.
We're out of time, man.
Yeah, it's at 42 minutes, 43 minutes right now.
Oh,
It's 5:03. We got a men's conference in like
man.
57 minutes.
Let me drop the best thing on here.
Okay.
And
okay.
and you can chop it up a little bit,
No.
right?
No.
No,
I'm going to keep it all. This is too good not to chop. Why would I chop it up?
because I want to say some stuff for you to chop out really quick.
Well, let's end the podcast and then you can chop it out.
End the podcast and then chop it out.
Yeah, well then you can say it so I don't have to.
No, never mind. You'll understand after I say it. But let me just throw this in there because this was the best part we saved for last. Ready, Sophie?
Hmm?
Are you ready, Sophie?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure you're ready, Sophie?
Mm-hmm.
People who want to get better at conflict need to build a culture of resolving conflict before there's a conflict or after there's a conflict. So it's like the people, and this is why I was talking about the people in your circle. The people in your circle, especially like kids or spouses or best friends, would benefit so much from like, hey, when there's no conflict, to say to each other, literally say the words to each other, hey, I want to make sure that we're capable of handling conflict well. And so when we do have a conflict, I want us to understand what we mean by conflict. And people think I'm nerdy for stuff like this, but it is so helpful.
You're such a nerd, but I love you.
Good, thank you. I don't want to have conflict with you, so I'm not going to rebuke you right now. But write down a definition or operating procedure of how you handle conflict for your household or your friend, like those people in your circle. So Brittany and I, what we do when we have a big conflict and our lives so crazy, we have been known to take conflict resolution dates because our life's so crazy. It's so easy for meaningful conflicts to get swept under the rug, or like we're tired. Like, hey, I love you. I'm committed to you. This conflict can exist, and our relationship isn't going to be destroyed. And that's how some of our relationships are. It's like it's easy not to address them. So we'll literally just say, hey, this is a really important conflict we need to solve. This is an issue to address. So I'll call you guys and have you guys babysit, and Brittany and I will go out for a date, and we'll have the agenda on our date. We'll go to a really nice restaurant. We'll get dressed up. It'll be a hot date, but like we'll have this agenda of like, hey, here's why I'm ticked off at you, and here's why I'm ticked off at you, and we're gonna spend dinner talking about how to work through it, because we're committed to the health of our relationship more than we are our met expectations or unmet expectations. And I just want to be an advocate of people embracing conflict to get to a better place in life, rather than, like you said when we very first started, most people don't handle conflict well and wish that their life was different than it is because of the conflict. And these things will help people actually do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's so good.
Is it so good?
It is.
You're so excited to be done.
No.
I want to go get food before this men's conference.
All right. Hey, thanks for joining us on the Ramble. This was, I think, the best podcast that we've done.
So do you think this is the best one we've ever done?
Generosity was really good.
Generosity was so good. Multiple people have told me how good generosity was.
Listen,
That's my favorite so far. This did not displace that.
I think it did. This was great.
What was your favorite part?
All of it, dude. You're the expert on conflict.
Man, I love conflict.
I know you do.
I love it. I wish I had more of it in my life just so I could
resolve it.
Because
you're an achiever.
Hey guys, why don't you guys do something wrong so we can have conflict real quick?
You're a 3, not an 8.
I'm an 8, man.
All right, we gotta go.
I'm an 83.
I gotta preach and I gotta run through.
I forgot you're preaching.
Yeah,
that's why you're so focused on it. I'm so excited, guys. Get to just go be. I'm so excited because I get to just go be a guest tonight.
I gotta open them up, and I'm gonna make some people mad. I'm gonna hurt some feelings.
What are you?
Make them cry.
What are you doing?
I'm doing exactly what Pastor Craig told me to do.
Are you causing conflict with our men?
I'm gonna cause conflict within themselves.
They'll cry
with their sin.
Stop ignoring Sophie. Are you going to make them cry?
If tears flow, it's better than the blood shed. Not like Jesus' bloodshed,
The
but like
flowing of tears is better than the shedding of blood. That sounds like something I like written down. That's my next tattoo.
all right. Share this podcast with your grandma and your mother and your father.
We love you guys. Thanks for joining us today. See you later.